Welcome to France 24 for this new edition of The Interview with Oliver Stone, one of the famous American movie maker. If you liked Born on the 4th of July, JFK, or Nixon, you will love W, the story of George W. Bush, the President of the United States. Bonjour, Oliver.
Bonjour, Ulysses.
First question, this movie is released just before the election. Is it a political ploy, or is it just a good commercial coup?
A ploy. We made the movie as fast as we could because Bush is a very important figure, and he represents a tremendous change in the world. I mean, the way America thinks of itself as well, and the way the world thinks of America. 8 years of cauchemar, of nightmare, for many Americans. So I think whatever the election of 2008 reveals, the person who wins is going to be struggling with the shadow of Bush. Bush is a major figure, major player. People have always underestimated him, always, and that's part of his success. So, it's time. There's an urgency about this. I mean, we have not been able to make the movie before because we did not know enough information about his presidency, about the march to Iraq. Much of this information has come out in the last few years, only because they've been a very secretive administration. Once we knew this, we felt we had to go as fast as possible. The irony, of course, is that we have an election, and if we didn't, I'm glad we can make it now and get it out in America, because it might make people think about why they voted for him, who he is, how he got there, and where America is going now.
But your idea is to influence the vote of the Americans?
No, it wasn't. I would hope to raise the consciousness of Americans, to make them think about what kind of people we elect to office. Are we going to believe in the cowboy mythology? Are we going to continue to believe in force versus diplomacy? Are we going to react to the world like gunslingers? I mean, these are questions that are fundamental. I think in the character Josh Brolin plays, you see a guy who's a bit charming, arrogant, egoistical. He is John Wayne, but his politics are pretty nuclear. I mean, the fact is that the guy wants to fight wars, and he is in 3 wars. John Wayne's the same way. He wants to, he's not going to back down.
Still, Karl Rove, who was advisor to George Bush, says that the movie is coming 4 years too late, and that you want to influence the election. What do you say to him?
Certainly that's the way Karl Rove thinks. He thinks in terms of manipulation. He lives it, A movie maker cannot live that way. A movie maker has to create. We have to come. In fact, if Karl Rove bothers to see the movie, he would say that he probably comes out very well, and there's a certain compassion in the movie. And I don't mean sympathy; I mean compassion. There's a big difference, and I think we we try to walk in the shoes of George Bush to see the way he sees the world. It's very important to see. I'm not bringing my opinions to the movie. I really am not. I have no malice in this movie because that's a personal matter. This is a dramatist. I'm a professional the way you're a journalist. I approach this as a dramatist.
But still, it's one of the amazing things of the movie. George Bush is kind of nice in the movie, and at the same time he's doing terrible things like going to war in Iraq. So what should the people remember?
It's a great story. Well, it's a great story. That's the whole point, isn't it? Listen, the banality of evil is the description of Hitler. Sometimes Bush sees himself as a good guy, and that's the way he wakes up, and we show that very clearly. He sees the world in Manichaean terms. He sees good versus evil, us versus terrorists. It's a black and white world. He doesn't have the possibility, the complexity of thought to think of himself as a bad guy. And that's the great irony and ambiguity of this age, is we are so confused as a result. We're so confused because the good guys, which are supposed to be America, suddenly acted like bad guys. It's a wonderful irony. I think in my grandchildren, your grandchildren, are going to be talking about this guy and what we did in Iraq for a long time, because America went wrong. Like Vietnam, it went wrong.
In some way, by showing George Bush being, in fact, a disaster for the country and going to war, maybe you're also showing to the Americans that they elected twice the wrong president.
Oh, yeah, but I don't make that judgment. I let you make that judgment, the viewer. I mean, we present the Bush administration the way they talk about themselves. the way Bush defends his position in Iraq is freedom and democracy in the Middle East. We're bringing a demonstration to the model. Bush says in the long term he will be right. Iraq is a good thing. We got rid of Hussein. Cheney makes his point about geopolitics and domination. This is American policy, by the way. The Bush doctrine is one of domination of the world, which is to say, after the Soviet Union fell, we would not allow for the emergence of any military or economic rival. It's a very serious doctrine, the Bush doctrine.
We have done a poll, a survey in Europe and in the United States about the election and about Obama and McCain. And a large majority of Europeans are voting for Obama, as the Americans are still cautious, around 40% of the Americans. How do you explain such a difference between the perception and the desire of the Europeans to see a big change in America and what are the American thinking? Why, are you surprised, and what do you make of that?
Well, the Europeans have been very critical of Bush, and rightly so. They questioned Iraq. The Europeans are much more interdependent. I think that Bush represents a form of American isolationism going back to the early parts of the 20th century. So Bush to them is a provincial person, whereas Americans were not able to see that until Americans are fed up with Bush probably because of the execution of the war, not because of the principle of the war. If he had gone to Iraq, done his thing, gotten out, they would have said fine, like they did with Panama, like they did with Iraq One. You know, they'd been happy. See, I think the principle is what's wrong, and I think that we have a gunslinger cowboy mentality. And I think I tried to show that scene, the foreign policy, how it was decided between the Cheney people, the concept of domination. It's very important to understand how America thinks.
And in this survey, we also show that when people want to vote for Obama in Europe or in America, it's because they want a real change, a real radical change. Is it what is at stake here at the election?
Listen, I think whoever wins, I hope it's Obama, I think he's going to be in the shadow of Bush. Bush has raised, for example, the Pentagon spending to new levels, extraordinary levels. We're spending almost $1 trillion a year in military. How the hell can we survive like that? How can Obama make a difference? Yeah, he can pull out of Iraq, which is what he says he's going to do. Well, it's doubtful he'll be able to do it completely. But he talks about a wider war in Afghanistan. And I don't think that's a war that's winnable. It's another story like Vietnam. So here we are with American militarism again, huge amounts of budget, a huge percentage, I think 60+% of our budget goes to defense. How do we change that? We have corporations, you have special interest groups, you have lobbyists. America is a system.
Are we witnessing the end of the American era in the world?
The end.
Or the American superiority of America in the world?
I think that there's a bit significant shift under Bush. I think the post-World War II era has significantly altered now. The perception of America has changed. And I think we Americans have begun to question our values. The Constitution has been changed by Bush. He's taken tremendous powers to the presidency that he didn't have before. Nixon did the same thing. He's appointed himself in many ways King George IV. We don't like kings in America. We have a king. Or so does Dick Cheney wants the president to be king. Very dangerous. There's also, you know, the concept of torture, the concept of Guantanamo, the concept of rendition camps where we put people. This is not the America that I can accept.
You know that during his 2 terms, Bush and his friends attacked very much Hollywood, talking about Hollywood decadence. And maybe for them you are one of the symbols of this Hollywood decadence. What do you say to them?
I think the decadence that is occurring is taking place in the Capitol, in Washington, D.C. I think that you're looking at a case of Nero, the Emperor Nero of Rome. I think Bush is fiddling while Rome burns. That's true decadence.
Is it true that you had some trouble to do the movie, to finance it, and that you were, having trouble to find the money?
It was never an easy movie to get made. No, he's a very controversial figure.
Is it because of the pressure from the White House, or from the establishment, the Republican establishment?
There's a lot. Listen, the movie. We're very lucky to have made this movie and gotten it out the way without compromising, because if the situation had gone differently and the Bush people had been more successful in the last year, we might very well have been in a war with Iran right now, or Venezuela, or, you know what I'm saying? They would have been more aggressive. But things went the other way, thank God. Obama emerged, he survived, and of course we had the economy that went against them. So a series of factors changed. But you know, when we started the movie, that was not so. So this is a very delicate situation and a delicate time.
But
what if there had been a terrorist attack in our country? What if there had been a terrorist attack right in the middle of it all, and McCain would have surged as a security candidate, so to speak?
Some people have asked, after seeing your movie, has Oliver Stone gone soft? Because what you show of George Bush is kind of, once again, sympathetic at some point.
As I repeat, I'm a dramatist. My job is to get inside Bush. My job is not to judge him. My job is to show you the way he thinks. By sharing in his experience, walking in his shoes. You come out of that movie, and you know what an activist, a liberal friend of mine said to me? He said, you know, I never in my life thought I could feel any compassion for George Bush. I hate him so much. But you know what? You made me feel that, and because of that, and more importantly, I feel more compassion for our country. I understand this point of view better. Don't make fun of George Bush. Don't underestimate him. Big mistake.
Merci. Thank you very much, Oliver Stone.
Thank you, Ulysses.
Great movie, a comedy and also a tragedy.
Merci bien.
Thank you for being on France 24 and stay with us for more news on France 24. À bientôt.